The liquefied petroleum gas, commonly known as cooking gas, skyrocketed to about 1,300 naira per kilogram early this month from less than 500 naira in 2018, sending shockwaves through households nationwide and adding another layer of burden to an already strained population. In a move aimed at curbing the rising cost of cooking gas, the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Ekperikpe Ekpo, announced the immediate suspension of LPG exportation. Now, how effective will this be in reducing the price of this commodity? This morning, Tolulokpe Aderemi, partner, Perch, Stone and Grace, joins me to talk about this. It's nice to have you around, Tolulokpe Aderemi, on the show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
So I would like us to do a bit of foundation building before we get into your thoughts looking at the suspension of the LPG exportation mechanism. Now, speaking to the gas value chain in Nigeria and the current challenges bedeviling the sector, how do you see it?
Well, let me start by saying it's not a new issue in the country at all. And I think successive governments have tried over the years to try and correct that part of the value chain. And essentially, like we both know, the main problem around that value chain is the price of gas. And you see, to the extent that we can make the price, of gas cost reflective, I think we will overcome that challenge. But let me, speaking of the foundation as you talked about, and I thank you very much for picking on this topic of LPG. I think the conversation sometimes may be misdirected. And what do I mean? So the conversation around the suspension or the ban, as they have used it, of the LPG, I think the foundation of it is what is misplaced, and which was why I thanked you for that foundation. And what's that foundation, if you may ask me? The foundation is the real people who this thing affects are not really within the equation of this conversation. The hike in the price of LPG, for both of us, you and I, we can afford it. But the truth of the matter is it's a strain on us, but yet we still may be able to buy it. But the real people who the conversation should focus on are the 68.3% of those who still use solid biomass to cook. These are the people who, about 175 million of them, they have no access at all to LPG. And so rather than focus on the conversation around non-affordability, I focus, and I urge the media to also look at the absence of access at all. And why is this important? It's important because every year, my brother, 93,300 people die in this country as a result of climate impact, both of deforestation and cooking emission. And this is not my statistics. This is the statistics from the World Health Organization. Who are these 93,000? They are our girl children. They are our wives. They are our mothers. These are people who are traditionally charged with using charcoals, using firewood, etc. Those are the people that this thing really affects. And these are the category of people that we should take out from that equation into the equation of the use of LPG. But the question is, which again is something we need to start focusing on, why do they still use solid biomass? So rather than focus on, oh, we cannot afford it if there's hike in price, truth is, I mean, it's only if you and I are deceiving ourselves. 18,000 is a strain, but we may be able to afford it. But this category of people that I talk about that die every year don't even have any enlightenment knowledge of it at all. And for those who even have, there's this traditional custom of, if I cook with solid biomass materials, I'm likely to get a better taste of the food. So I'm sure you probably have heard that when I cook jollof rice with firewood I'm likely to get a better deal.
Permit me to come in here. If, of course, from what you're saying means that this particular approach is knee-jerk and probably might provide short-term solutions, are there any need to probably long-term solutions that you would say this particular directive would afford the country?
The long-term solution, can I go ahead?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you very much. You see, the long-term solution is that we need to shore up our production capacity for LPG in Nigeria. It will interest you to know that our capacity today is only 69,968 MT, which we use in Nigeria. Compare that to what they have in Ghana. Ghana has over 200,000. And this 69,000, something that I've talked about, is only utilized by only 200 registered LPG bottling plants in Nigeria. And so let's start that conversation from there. So we complain about hiking price, but what's the production capacity? We can't produce beyond what our capacity is. And that was what birthed what I'm sure you would have read, which is the Decade of Gas Initiative. And that's a crucial point. Was that Decade of Gas Initiative? It demonstrated government's intention to investing in the LPG market. And I can give you some small statistics regarding the extent of investment. So we have thought about it long before now. Our production facilities, the LPG production facilities, we budgeted 2 billion, at least to put us into where you expect us to be in that long-term place. For distribution and marketing, we had the same 2 billion. For storage, we budgeted 750 million. Bottling plants, we budgeted 750 million. And I can go on and go on like that. Now, these were expected to impact different sectors, i.e. electricity, so it was to affect power generation. It was to affect the auto gas. We all remember the auto gas initiative. It was to affect industries.
Okay, now, Aderem, you've also mentioned the cost implication of having these particular commodities supplied to end users. But then, according to what we know, there are internal saboteurs. Now, a few issues have actually been identified, by operators and marketers in the Nigeria's domestic market. And this includes a trend where you see some certain off-takers who have allocations with the NLNG, but they do not have any facility with which to process it. But then you see them still going around to sell such commodity at a double offtake price to some marketers, which in a way inflates the price when it gets to the market. So another is the multiplicity of taxes and fees by agencies of government. So how challenging are these issues? How concerning are they? And what can be done to nip them?
Certainly they're challenging, but they're not new. And so when you look at the various sectors, it happens in all sectors. And you see, sometimes when you bid for a commodity or you bid for a project, you don't necessarily need to, it's just like, for example, when you import petroleum products into the country, you don't necessarily need to have a storage facility. What you must have is evidence that you have access to one. And so that is why you find out that importers will normally have, marketers will normally have what is called throughput agreements. And throughput agreements means it's an understanding between you and an existing storage facility owner, such that once your petroleum product berths in the country, you can store it there. That storage facility is a prerequisite, or is a sine qua non, as we put it in law, for you to obtain an import license in the first. So it's not new at all. I think what is troubling, which is what your question is the fact that you see the regulator, which in this case is the authority, should set up a task force. Because once we understand that when you sell this license or this permit in the secondary market, it hikes the price, of the product, which is antithetical to the overall objective, of government. So set up a task force. Just the way task force, followed up with the equalization form in the upstream oil sector, if you remember. So set up that task force. Let the task force focus on it, and then we'll naturally. I don't think that is too much. I'm more worried about, the consequences of even this ban, this so-called ban, that we've seen. It has good sides, don't get me wrong.
Okay.
We can look at the positive consequences and the negative, but we just have to strike a balance.
All right, definitely. We need to strike a balance. So, look, Deremi, partner, Perchstone and Grace, thank you so much for your time on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.